Hello and welcome to the Bike Show, which this week has some tyre news of more in the pipeline for Hero in South Africa, whilst we shall begin with news of two boxers. Not the fighting kind of boxer, but the kind that slurps petrol, explodes and then fires you off down a road, whether that be covered in tar or gravel. BMW has just launched the 2021 versions of the Super Touring RT and the inimitable GS, obviously a bit late because of some reason. Can't quite remember what at the moment, but that's not important. What is that our man Don was there and can now tell us all about them, but not before telling us exactly where you were, Don.
We went to a place called George. It's a town near a place called Cape Town, which Matt, you'll be familiar. It's like your upbringing. Wet and cold.
Well,
so, yeah.
As you may have realised, although it's summer where I am here in Europe, it's obviously winter down in South Africa. So I take it was like having a tour in winter in Manchester, was it then?
Exactly. George, okay, yeah, wet and cold, so not exactly ideal, but also very, very beautiful. So it's a town down by the coast. It's about 400 kilometers east of Cape Town. Absolutely brilliant. And we did a ride from there. So we're down by the coast, all lush and beautiful. And not very far. I mean, it's a 2-hour ride, not even, and we're in the middle of the Karoo Desert at a place called Oudtshoorn.
Now, we've got two new models from BMW, as we mentioned. The GS is the one that is obviously the biggest seller in South Africa, but around the rest of the world, to be honest. But as a bit of a touring man myself, and as a long-time fan of the RT, I'm more interested in that this time. It seems there's been a little bit more done to that, Don. So I don't know exactly where you want. I suppose let's start with what appears not to have changed too much, which is the underpinnings of it. The engine is pretty much as it was, isn't it?
Well, this is what you would call a facelift. So most of the sort of change, it looks different, but not really. So the chassis is more or less the same. The motor is that same. It's liquid cooled, partially liquid cooled. That weird system BMW has got with that VVT variable cam timing thing. It's still. I mean, they didn't really need to change it, if we're honest. It's an absolute peach of a motor. 136 horsepower, 143 newton meters of torque. That I suspect is all just a flat line. You know what I mean? The whole way through. It
Yes.
just seems to have 143 newton meters, 136 horsepower from 3,000 to whatever the red line is. So yeah, peach of a motor. I'm not surprised they didn't change it.
Okay, and in terms of that facelift then, I've only seen it in the pictures. Look, the RT has always had a kind of unique look. It's a model that's been around longer than Don has in fact been alive. I think it's about 43 years now the model's been around. It's always been kind of big and bulbous and a huge frontal aspect to it. That remains, but I mean, you're younger than me. Maybe it's my older genes. I think it's a handsome beast. What is it like in the flesh?
Oh, especially the blue. I mean, they gave me a silver one to ride, but the blue one, it looks absolutely magnificent, especially from the front. You know, you lean over and you look at it from the front. You know, with those sort of eyes. You know, those sort of LED eyes. The way it looks. No, it is a beautiful looking thing.
The RT has always been known, I think in large part because of the help that the low-down boxer engine gives in terms of weight distribution and centre of gravity. It's been a deceptively good handling big touring bike. You say no changes to the chassis, so then I presume handling-wise it still belies its looks.
Yeah, I didn't actually ride the last one. I'm going to be honest with you. I think either you did it or someone did it. But so we did this ride from George to Oudtshoorn over all these different mountain passes. It was freezing cold. It was raining. And the way we were working is, because we've still got a videographer still stuck in Chile, getting over COVID and all kinds. She's okay now, she's coming back soon. But what we're doing is there was the leader sort of from BMW leading the group sort of up ahead with some people kind of diligently following. And there were three of us kind of hanging back. So there's Sean from Dirt and Trail, a fellow named Carl from South African Motorcyclists. And what they were doing is they were stopping and then waiting for me to come past and filming me. I would go a little bit ahead, stop, wait for them to come past and film them. So it was this leapfrog thing that kept on going. And it was working well, except one time I pulled off and I saw Sean, who's quite a handy rider, pulled off sort of not too far behind me. And I thought, that's not enough distance. You know, I need to get further ahead so I can stop and, you know, put the bike on its side stand, get rolling and get everything. So I started, you know, hurrying up. Gotta go. Now go through these corners. Where is Sean? Oh, he's still there. Gotta go more. And after a while, I thought to myself, I'm riding a giant touring bike in the cold rain as fast as I possibly can to get away from this guy. And you know, the thing is, I'm not noticing the motorcycle. I've forgotten about the motorcycle. And I keep saying, this is the point of any motorcycle, is that you sort of forget about it. You know, especially when it comes to handling and comfort and that. When you forget about the motorcycle, I mean, that's amazing. And I'd forgotten about the motorcycle. I was not even thinking about the wet road. The tires were working well. The handling was working amazingly. It was not giving me any problems, and I'm riding like hell. I did get far ahead enough, by the way, to get off and shoot and all that. So Sean,
That is a fantastic testament to the abilities of a bike. Don's absolutely right. So good, even in those ridiculous conditions that you don't notice it. Which begs the question then, Don, let me follow up on that a little bit. I'm presuming then, given that it was wet and cold, that the wind protection via its, I imagine it's still an adjustable screen, and possibly any sort of comforted heating elements, they were all in play, were they?
Yep, all in play. What I will say something about the screen is I tilted it all the way up, so highest. I mean, we weren't doing any flat out stuff. It was all sort of slower technical riding. So I had the screen all the way on up, and it was raining, and I was riding with my visor open. Now I guess, okay, I'm shorter than most people. Some of the taller guys didn't quite feel the same. But once again, I forgot that I had my visor open, if you know what I mean, in the rain. So I was riding for some time, completely forgetting that I've got my visor open. Which again, now it's when it comes to handling and comfort, when you forget about the motorcycle, it's doing a really good job. And here again, visor open in the freezing cold, and I'm not thinking about being cold, and I'm not thinking about wind, and I'm not thinking about rain. It's doing its job. It was brilliant.
I am hoping that we'll have the same sort of answer, Don, to my next question, which is about the Shift Assist Pro, I think it is, on BMWs. This is the up and down quick shifter. I'm kind of hoping that there's been a little bit of an update, because on the boxer motors, on the twins as a rule on BMW's models, they're good at higher RPM, but lower down they can be a bit clunky. I always end up using a kind of manual thing. When the revs are low, I'm using the clutch, and I'm just doing it like the old-fashioned way. I mean, Don, has it got any better?
No.
Okay.
But as you kind of point out, a lot of bikes sort of have this problem, and these shift modes were made to work with RPM. That's sort of it. But BMW, and this is weird. Okay, BMW twins, so the boxers and the parallel twins, I notice it a lot more than I do on other motorcycles. Especially, you're coming up to a right turn. You're indicating, you're waiting to kind of turn into that lane, and you're changing down, and and this thing just won't change. You're like, oh no, I've got to use a clutch. So exhausted. But you notice it more, and I find it weird because I say the twins, whereas the BMW 4-cylinders, the S1000s and the XRs, RRs are, the downshift is amazing. It's absolutely brilliant. I'd say possibly the best. And I just kind of wonder how they cannot do the same thing on the twins.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame, but as Don said, and as I've mentioned, you kind of get used to it. You have a part of your brain that says, I'm just going to use this at higher RPM when I'm tramping on a bit. Otherwise, at lower speeds, I just do it the old-fashioned way, and nothing wrong with that at all. I am quite surprised, just as an aside on a personal level, I've expected the last couple of years that BMW might, on their big touring bikes, do something similar to Honda with a kind of DCT gearbox or some kind of advancement. These big touring bikes are begging out for it, but there hasn't been any of that. Don, we're going to stay on the electronic side of things. Let's touch on the radar control that we've seen on Ducati and seen on KTM now. Let's touch on that in a little bit. But I'm a bit of a geek, I like my PlayStation, that sort of thing. That 10.5-inch TFT screen looks amazing. I mean, I'm sorry, a lot of you be going, well, you don't need it on a motorbike. I don't care, it's fantastic. Tell me it's as useful as it is good looking.
You don't need it on a motorcycle, but you're so glad it's there. It is, but when they first came out in cars and you sat down in some bloke's car, you went, oh, look at that, it's got a big fancy screen thing. I mean, it's on motorcycles now, this huge, big animated screen, completely unnecessary, but it's so cool. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I love it, yeah. And it's now got the navigation app, so you can connect it to, so the screen itself does not have navigation. You connect it via Bluetooth to your phone, and the BMW app then. So it's like the new X. I used it on the new XR, works fantastically. So it's got all of that. And apart from that, it's just a really big, easy to use, simple screen.
Then let's go back to the radar. A lot of people on the forums, even some journalists, have suggested that it's largely a gimmick. I'd argue with that. As someone who's done a lot of touring with my wife on big touring bikes, you're covering long distances, tiring day in the saddle, it is very handy, just with traditional cruise control, to be able to give your right wrist, the throttle wrist, a bit of a rest. This just makes that ability much more useful, doesn't it, Don? I mean, there are twisty roads around your venue that you were on the launch. Did you get a chance to try it out on this?
We did. I didn't try it out too much on the twisty roads, although we've got a test coming up for that later. It was only towards the end of the ride we kind of turned it on. And then, wow, look at that. You know, you've got this adaptive cruise control. So, of course, I'm an idiot. And you know, if you've watched the show, you've sort of gathered this by now. So anyway, I was riding along on this straight bit of road behind this mate of mine, and got the thing locked onto him. It's got a great little animation. It's like a green sort of lane with a car. It tells you, hey, you're locked onto somebody. And I'm riding along, and I take my hands off the bars. Ooh, look at me. Clever, clever, clever. Look at me. Clever, clever, clever. Next thing, the group starts braking and turning right into a driveway. Clever, clever, clever. Whoop! And so with my hands off the handlebars, like an idiot, because I'm an idiot, children, look, this is an idiot. I had my hands off the handlebars and the bike just suddenly slammed on brakes. And of course then I put my hands back on the bar, but it slowed right down to whatever tiny little speed that they were doing. And I'm not joking. If I suspect that if it didn't do that, it could have turned out a hell of a lot worse. What's also interesting is that these new models now come with 7 different modes, and that includes now what they call an eco mode, which, yeah, it sounds pretty boring, and I'm not gonna lie, it's like a rain mode with a flu, you know, that kind of thing. But it is sort of amazing because I tried it. I had it in sort of dynamic whatchamacallit, and I was just looking at on the screen rev fuel consumption thing, and I was working somewhere between 7 and 6.5. I then put in this eco mode. It basically means when you open the throttle, very little happens. The sort of motor goes, excuse me, you want to do what? But I also noticed then it went from about 7 to 6.5 down to 5.7. This is kilometers per 100, or liters per 100 kilometers, what it measures in. So it did definitely do that. And I think if you were to use that with the cruise control, you know, when you're not really worried about fast acceleration, all of that, it'll add so much mileage to your tank. If it works in a car system and it works well, surely a bike, it's even more important.
Yeah, I'd agree wholeheartedly with that, and it's a bit of technology you'll get used to. It's an aid. I mean, you're going to be riding along. You give yourself a bit of a physical rest. You're not necessarily giving yourself too much of a mental rest. It's good to know the backups there, a bit like traction control, but it doesn't mean you're going to ride like an idiot. You're still checking your mirrors, you're still aware of what's going on around you. I think it's a great advancement. All the manufacturers taking advantage of it. Let's get to the thorny issue, and it must be a thorny issue because this is a massive motorbike, massively capable with a load of electronic goodies in it. It probably costs the earth, does it, Don?
Yeah, everything these days, I mean, any big motorcycle these days in South African rand starts with the number 3, which is sort of now it's a dreaded number. This one is, okay, there's not that many adaptations. So what BMW do now is they come in with they bring everything in top spec, and if you want stuff removed, then they'll remove it and charge you less. And to be honest, removing it just means going on computer and taking it off. Yeah. So the options now, the sort of base price, which is the one with the least amount of stuff on it, is 341,000 Rand. The top spec one is 353,000 Rand. I mean, you may as well go for the top spec, really.
Yeah, I agree completely. Actually, it's pretty good value. Here in Europe, it's about 15,000 euros or so for the base one, going up to the sort of low 20s. Yeah, it is a lot of bike for the money. It's actually pretty damn good value. The RT is like a fine old wine because the more it ages, the better it gets. And the more you drink, the better looking it gets too.